this piece in particular, when I was reading about it in the book, the anecdote about Gwen Verdon taking Liza Minnelli shopping through the flea markets of Paris and London. Did that kind of start in the 70s from a film history standpoint? Are there a lot of examples of like someone going through the flea markets of Paris prior to like a cabaret?
Costuming, maybe when it was earlier in film, you hear about the stars getting roles because their own personal wardrobe was great and they were using their personal wardrobe as the costumes for the movie. But then as you get into studio production where there actually are costume shops building things, they're still not necessarily building everything. Depending on what it is, if it's a really stylized world and they're inventing like a future, then there's a lot more costume production involved. If you're doing something, even if it's within, like this was, if it's within like several decades of the decade you're making the movie in, you would go and get actual vintage clothing and use actual vintage clothing as part of the production, at least not from mid-century on. I wouldn't think that that was strange that they were using some vintage pieces as part of their costume design. I mean, the nature of costume design is that there's a budget, there's always a budget, and they're always asking for twice as much as the budget they give you. And so you have to pick and choose what you're spending your money on or not. This is a beautiful piece that, I mean, it's just a stunning thing that they found, but I think there's a lot of vintage use and vintage shopping as part of film and costuming. It depends what you have access to. I mean, the other story about this is that they were trying to find costumes from the studio there that might actually have pieces from Weimar, Germany, and they weren't given access, I think, because the studio was a little bit questioning what the content of the movie was going to be and how Germany was going to look and like that kind of thing. So they had less access to those items. But the costume designer situation on that film was also a little interesting, non-traditional. And I think Gwen had a role in getting things finished, as you might be able to see in the recent miniseries that happened, Fosse Verdon, which is amazing. So I'm not surprised they're using vintage, and I'm not surprised that she had a role in it, and it's still valid because it's such a centerpiece of this scene. This is like a major scene in the film.